In the 3rd year of my marriage to Harris, his mistress Daisy found me. I was pregnant with Harris's child. He doesn't love you. If it weren't for your family's pressure to marry, today Harris's wife should be me. Daisy said. I looked at her coldly. Does Harris know you came to find me? Daisy stroked her still flat belly and said. I hope you divorce him as soon as possible. The child cannot be without a father. Then let him come and talk to me. I said coldly. The last day of the new year, and also the 3rd anniversary of my marriage with Harris. Harris called me right on time after work, his voice deep and calm. Serena, don't you suffer every year on this day? I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the office, gazing at the dazzling street scene below, coldly interrupting his next words. Is there anything else? Not hearing a response from the person on the other end, I continued, if there's nothing, I'll hang up first. There are still documents to process. Serena, you should stay in the abyss and repent. Harris, you too. There was no care, no greetings, only mutual resentment, and I hung up the phone. In the 3 years since we got married, he hasn't returned home even once. The last time we met was at our wedding 3 years ago. For these 3 years, he has intentionally avoided me, only calling to provoke me on our wedding anniversary each year. This is because the day after our wedding anniversary is the death anniversary of our parents. On the phone's display, a message alert popped up. Opening the message, Daisy's words appeared before me. The more arrogant you are during the day, the more lonely I will make you at night. Serena, don't say it's your wedding anniversary, even if it's your parents' funeral. As long as I say a word, Harris will obediently stay by my side. If you have any sense, just get a divorce quickly, to avoid humiliation. Daisy retracted the message within 2 minutes, but little did she know I had already saved the screenshot. It's been 3 years, and there's been no progress. Harris and I grew up together, so we can be considered childhood sweethearts. When we were kids, Harris always liked to come to my house to play, but I really disliked him. It was just because whenever he came over, I had to play with him the whole time, and as soon as I showed the slightest bit of annoyance, he would cry, and I would face my mom's wrath. In kindergarten, he didn't play with the other kids, he clung to me, wanting to sleep next to me, wanting to eat next to me. If I weren't a girl, he would even follow me to the bathroom. When I was in elementary school, my mom didn't choose an international school like Harris's mom did. Instead, she donated a teaching building and forced me to attend a key public elementary school in the capital. I thought I had finally escaped the campus life of being inseparable from Harris. Just when I was happy for a couple of days, the Fu family donated a library to my school. Harris became my only desk mate throughout my elementary school years. In middle school, Harris's mom came to ask my mom for a choice. Upon learning that my mom had donated a building to a key middle school in the capital, she promptly followed suit and donated a library. Thus, my only desk mate in middle school was Harris. However, the Harris of my youth would not cry like he did when we were children, just because I ignored him. Now, when I don't pay attention to him, he actually finds various ways to cheer me up. When I'm feeling down about not doing well on a test, he takes me out to relax. He even prepares red date ginger tea for me in advance during those few days when I'm not feeling well, just in case my stomach hurts. He knows my menstrual cycle better than I do. In high school, Harris's mother wanted him to attend an international school. After all, with his grades, it would be a bit difficult for him to get into the same high school as me. I was already sad about us soon being apart, but unexpectedly, Harris surprised me again. He had his mother donate 2 buildings, allowing him to be my desk mate for 2 years of high school. In my senior year, I broke my leg while hiking during the holiday, so I stayed at home to recuperate for a semester. At first, Harris would come to my house every day to attend private lessons with me. I don't know how long it was, but when Harris came again, he often talked about a girl, Daisy, the new transfer student in our class. He said that although Daisy came from a poor family, she was very motivated and consistently ranked first in the whole school. He said Daisy was like a lovely little sister next door. Gradually, Harris appeared less and less in my home, in front of me. In the second half of my senior year, after my leg injury healed, I returned to school. Since I arrived early, only a few classmates were scattered around. I sat in my seat, took out my book, and started flipping through it, not noticing the surprised looks from those few classmates. Before long, Harris arrived, accompanied by a petite and beautiful girl. I just glanced up at them and then returned my gaze to the book. "Classmate, this is my seat, could you please get up?" A delicate voice came from beside my ear. Oh? How come I didn't know that my seat had changed owners while I was recovering? I didn't look up, my tone a bit cold. "Serena, I asked her to sit here." "Pay attention to your tone, don't be sarcastic." Harris looked at Daisy's slightly reddened eyes, feeling somewhat angry. I stood up, looked into Harris's eyes, and said word by word. "This is my seat, I am stating the facts, even if I was recuperating and didn't come, this is not a place you can just occupy as you wish." "I'm sorry, I didn't know this was your spot." "Harris, don't be mad at me for being with my classmates, I'll just change my position." Daisy's fair fingers grasped the hem of Harris's clothing, gently shaking it as she spoke softly. Harris watched Daisy walk to the back of the classroom, swallowing the rest of his words as he chased after her. I continued to read, but the mist in my eyes made the words on the page blur and become difficult to recognize. From that day on, Harris was no longer my deskmate, and I no longer went to and from school with him every day. A few days passed like this, and after school, Harris blocked me at the classroom door. With red eyes and a hint of grievance, he asked me, "Just because I said a few words to you, are you planning to ignore me forever?" I calmly looked at him. "Harris, you left first." "I'm sorry, Serena, I really am, will you forgive me?" Harris held me in his arms, softly coaxing me. After all, we grew up together, and to say there were no feelings would be deceiving myself. "It won't happen again," I said. Harris held my hand and happily walked outside. Only none of us noticed that Daisy was watching everything from the shadowy corner of the staircase. A few days later, Harris found me in a rage and pushed me to the ground. His eyes were filled with anger. "Serena, I've already apologized to you, why are you still targeting Daisy?" Things happened too suddenly, and I didn't have time to react. When I fell, I twisted my ankle. The pain made me cry, but I still gritted my teeth and said, "Harris, if you're sick, go get treated. I haven't targeted anyone." "You still won't admit it, Daisy has been sent to the hospital by the person you found." "Serena, I really didn't expect you to bully your classmates too. I truly regret being friends with someone like you." After saying that, he turned and left, not even giving me a chance to explain. A few words sealed the fact that I was the bully. The classmates around me pointed and whispered. I watched Harris's figure fade away, a sudden sharp pain pierced my heart, and tears fell in big drops. I endured the pain, got up, called the driver, and then limped out of the school gate. From that day on, I never went back to school, nor did I see Harris and Daisy again. Dong, dong, dong. I don't know who set off the fireworks show in the suburbs of Beijing, but the entire event lasted all night. The sky over the entire capital was rendered dazzlingly bright. Tomorrow, this will be the front page headline of the gossip columns. Last night I slept in the president's lounge at the company, and when the secretary came to wake me this morning, I was still a bit dazed. Serena and Harris topped the trending news. Do you want to handle it? I took the tablet from the secretary's hand. The president of the Fu Corporation is rumored to be divorcing the president of the Su Corporation, publicly declaring his love for his girlfriend on New Year's Eve. The first thing that caught my eye was Harris holding a petite woman in his arms. The woman tilted her head back while he lowered his, and they smiled at each other. In Harris's deep eyes, there was not the indifference and irritation he had when looking at me, but rather a fullness of desire and deep affection. I withdrew my gaze and handed the tablet to the secretary. No need to worry. Is everything ready? I asked. It's all placed in your car. Thank you for your hard work, go home and celebrate the festival, today counts as your overtime. Thank you, Serena. As soon as the secretary left, My best friend Lena pushed the door open and angrily scolded, "Serena, Harris is going too far. That Daisy is nothing but trouble. Sit down, have some water to calm down. I'll tidy up a bit, and then we'll set off," I said nonchalantly, as if it wasn't my husband who had strayed. Half an hour later, Lena was driving me on the way to the cemetery. That bastard Harris, my uncle and aunt, couldn't wait for him before they passed away. Until their last moments, they only hoped to see Serena happy, but who knew that this dog of a man didn't even show up? I don't blame him, it's all in the past now. If it weren't for my father insisting that I marry Harris, claiming it was to fulfill a promise made with Harris's father, I wouldn't have to sacrifice my lifelong happiness just because Harris's father saved my father's life. If it weren't for this marriage, Harris and I would probably remain the most familiar strangers. He would marry the girl he loves, and I would marry the boy I love. 3 years ago, Harris and I quietly obtained our marriage certificate and held a wedding. But a phone call abruptly halted the ceremony halfway. Harris left me and ran away. Harris's mother was so angry that she had a heart attack and was hospitalized, while my parents stayed at the hospital to take care of her for a night. The next morning, my father and mother were in a car accident on their way home, and I helplessly waited at the door of the operating room. Harris's mom called Harris all night but couldn't get through. I knew he went to Daisy to get back at me. After a night of emergency treatment, the doctors still couldn't save my parents. Before his death, my father never saw Harris. He held my hand and told me not to hate him. If Harris didn't make me happy in 3 years, I could divorce him, and it would count as him not breaking his promise. After hearing the news, Harris's mother, overwhelmed with grief, suffered cardiac arrest and could not be saved. "Serena, it's time." Lena nudged me, pulling me back from memory to reality. We each held a bouquet of chrysanthemums as we arrived at my parents' grave. "It's been 3 years, Mom and Dad, I don't want to keep entangled with Harris, I want to live my own life. You won't blame me, will you?" The originally dark sky gradually cleared. On the way back, Lena looked at me somewhat uneasily, wanting to say something, but she hesitated to speak. When she looked at me with that expression for the 3rd time, I couldn't help it and turned to look at her. "If you have something to say, just say it, don't hold it in." Lena was taken aback for a moment, then smiled sweetly, "My brother is coming back today." This time it was my turn to be stunned. With a sudden break, Lena didn't have time to react and her face made intimate contact with the dashboard. "James is back?" Lena covered her forehead and glared at me through gritted teeth. "Yes, he is back. James, Lena's brother, is also my salvation." At that time, Harris and I were having a very unpleasant time because of Daisy. Neither of us chose to attend the university we had agreed upon. He accompanied Daisy to apply to a school, while I chose the school I desired. It was also at this school that I met Lena, and we became the best of friends. We talked about everything, and I wanted Lena to help me heal the scar in my heart. Who would have thought that this girl would turn around and introduce her brother to me? In the cafe, I saw him, James. The young man stood tall, handsome, with a pair of phoenix eyes that exuded nobility, a high-nose bridge, and he resembled Lena to some extent. However, this was not our first meeting. He was my senior and was currently pursuing his master's degree. The first time we met was on the school playground. Every morning, I would go to the playground to run, using exercise to soothe my emotions. Perhaps I hadn't slept well the night before. Halfway through my run, I felt dizzy, and just as I was about to fall, I was tightly caught by a pair of large hands and then fell into a warm embrace. Before I could see who it was, I fainted. When I opened my eyes again, I saw James discussing my condition with the school nurse. "How can you be her boyfriend when she has low blood sugar and you're still making her exercise vigorously? First, give her some glucose, and once that's done, you can take her home." James didn't refute, and asked a few more questions about future precautions. After politely thanking him, he walked towards me. When his icy hand touched my forehead, I couldn't help but shiver. He paused for a moment, then smiled at me. "Awake?" Thank you, senior." My head was still a bit dizzy, and my voice was somewhat hoarse. Just as I was about to get up to get some water, a straw appeared in front of me. "Don't move yet, if you're thirsty, just tell me." "The doctor said it's due to low blood sugar." "I just went out to buy you a cake." "Once you're feeling better, get up and eat." "Thank you, Senior. I'll treat you to a meal another day. You rest for now, and I'll keep an eye on the four." I fell asleep again, and when I woke up, James was already gone. On the table, there was a note and a box of cake. "Remember to eat the cake when you get up." After that, I never saw him again until today. It was only after chatting that I learned he had gone abroad as an exchange student for half a year. We talked a lot that day, and his gaze was filled with deep affection and tenderness. No matter how foolish I am, I know James's feelings for me. I don't believe in so-called love at first sight, and I'm even more afraid of being hurt again in the future. So I told him about my past with Harris. He said he would prove to me his sincerity. From then on, he would come to pick me up at the dormitory every day to go to class. Occasionally, he would attend class with me. He often carried candies with him, and every day he would regularly pop one into my mouth. On the school's confession wall, the photo of James feeding me candy with his head down is both affectionate and charming. That year of graduation, he confessed to me for the second time, and this time I did not reject him. It seemed that fate was always working against me. The day after I agreed to date James, my father asked me to come home, saying he had something important to discuss with me. Before I went home, I had a meal with James, dreaming together of a wonderful future. Little did I know, that was actually our last meeting. On the day I married Harris, I saw James once again. The light that used to shine in his eyes was gone, replaced by deep sadness and exhaustion. After the wedding, Lena told me that James was going abroad today to take over the group's overseas company. Serena, what's wrong with you today?" Lena patted my shoulder, looking at me with a face full of concern. "Oh, it's nothing, just thinking about some past events." I suppressed that little flutter in my heart and continued driving back. "Tomorrow is the birthday of the Jiang family's young lady. Do you want to go?" Lena changed the subject and said, "Yes, after all, 3 years ago, when I had just taken over the company and it was at its most difficult time, Uncle Jiang helped me a lot. 3 years ago, my parents suddenly passed away, and I hastily took over the Sioux group. With relatives creating obstacles from within and external pressure from rival companies, when the funding chain broke, I felt suffocated, teetering on the edge of collapse every day. Many businesses are waiting, anticipating the moment when the Sioux family mansion will collapse, hoping to get a share of the spoils. Just when I was about to reach my breaking point, Uncle Jiang found me. He helped me solve the problem of the broken capital chain, bringing the Sioux family back to life. Yet my nominal husband, Harris, held me in his warm embrace, indifferent to my life and death. My dad and Uncle Jiang can be considered family friends, and today's birthday celebrant is his youngest daughter. I'm not too familiar with the little birthday girl, and since she is 10 years younger than me, we don't have much in common to talk about. After simply greeting her, I began to search for Lena in the crowd. "Serena." A familiar voice sounded behind me. I paused in my breath and slowly turned around. When I saw who it was, I smiled politely. "James, long time no see." James was wearing a black casual suit today, which made his figure look even more perfect. He saw the emotions hidden in my eyes, and his hand, which hung by his side, rose uncontrollably but stopped as it approached me. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, it was as if he had made a certain decision. His fingers retracted, lowered, and a faint bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Long time no see. I just saw your husband bringing a woman to the birthday party." "Oh, that's none of your business, and it's not my business either," I said calmly. "Serena, the you from before was not like this." He looked at me with eyes full of heartache. The former Serena could not tolerate any sand in her eyes. The old Serena was cherished and loved, so she could not tolerate any sand in her eyes. After experiencing the death of her parents, Harris's betrayal, and the departure of her lover, the sentimental little Serena grew up overnight. I still remember at the wedding, James asked me if I really still liked Harris. I said, whether I like him or not has nothing to do with you anymore. James only said one thing at the time, Serena, he is not worthy of you at all. Only I will always be behind you, as long as you turn around. I didn't expect that he was right. Our marriage could only last until the 3rd year. When are you coming back? I changed the subject. Yesterday, James said. It seems he hurried back to catch today's birthday party. Serena? Daisy was leading Harris by the hand as they walked towards me. I thought I had mistaken someone, it really is you. Who is this? The president of the league group, James, I said coldly. Harris's expression suddenly darkened when he saw James. You all chat, I have something to do, excuse me. I turned to leave, but was stopped by Daisy. Serena, I know you don't like me and don't want to see me, but don't blame Harris, he just took extra care of me because he saw me all alone. Daisy's voice was a bit choked. You're overthinking it, I'm not familiar with you, let alone whether I like you or not. I frowned slightly, my eyes betraying my irritation. Serena, I've given you the position of the young mistress of the Fu family, what more do you want from me? Daisy's tears flowed down her cheeks, and combined with her petite figure, it created a sense of beauty that made one feel pity for her. Let? Who cares, if you want it, take it. I see a hint of impatience in Daisy's eyes as I shake off her grip on my hand. Ah. Daisy stumbles, her body leaning back, and Harris steps forward to pull her into his arms. Serena, don't go too far. Daisy has already given you enough face, don't take advantage of it. A cold glint flashed in Harris's eyes as he stared at me intently. His voice carried a warm anger, apologize to Daisy. The guests at the party turned to look this way upon hearing Harris's angry tone. I looked at the hostile gaze of the person across from me, then glanced at the crowd's eager eyes, and the anger that had been building up for so long finally erupted. I closed my eyes for a moment, just about to confront the pair of scoundrels. James had somehow stepped between me and Harris, blocking Harris's line of sight with his body. Harris is really interesting, allowing his partner to provoke his wife, and even wanting his wife to publicly apologize to his partner. He chuckled mockingly, I've never seen a scene like this before. Harris's face turned ashen, unconsciously tightening his grip around Daisy's arm. Who are you again? What does it have to do with you? I scoffed at myself and reached out to pull James behind me. Harris, today is Uncle Jung's daughter's birthday party, and I don't want to have a conflict with you, that doesn't mean I'm weak. I took 2 steps forward and lowered my voice, it's best to leave with your mistress now, or else. The look in my eyes as I stared at Harris was fierce, I didn't mind if we both went down together. After saying that, I turned to leave, not caring what expression the person behind me had at that moment. Everyone present were business people. Even if they knew what was going on inside, they wouldn't pry into it. Everyone was shrewd, no one would offend the Fu family and the Su family over a minor incident. The banquet had not yet begun, so I walked into a lounge and pushed the door open. Under the dim light, I shed my disguise, sat on the sofa, my hands hanging at my sides, emptying my mind. 6-year-old Harris secretly kissed my cheek while I was sleeping. 10-year-old Harris secretly hung my portrait on the wall of his bedroom. 17-year-old Harris quietly wrote at his desk that he would only be good to Serena for a lifetime. At 27, I thought that even if 2 people didn't love each other, at the very least they could treat each other with respect, but who knew he regarded me as an enemy? In this dim room, I suddenly laughed. I laughed at my own naivety and at the fact that I once had feelings for someone like him. I had thought about asking him why he had become this way, but now it seemed unnecessary. Just as I closed my eyes, preparing to take a short nap, someone pushed the door open. I raised my gaze towards the entrance, but in the dim light, I couldn't make out the person's appearance. As he walked closer to me, I saw James, with a smile in his eyes, sitting not far from me. How have you been all these years? A question I already knew the answer to. I turned my gaze elsewhere and replied irritably. When are you getting a divorce? James asked again. What does my divorce have to do with James's? A smile curled at the corner of my mouth as I stood up and walked in front of him, my fingers tracing his cheek, leaning down to whisper softly in his ear, and, James, when did I ever say I wanted to divorce my husband? James's eyes were filled with deep affection, and the look he gave me revealed a wealth of desire, no longer restrained as it had been outside. He suddenly grabbed my hand and gently pressed a kiss on the back of it. With a serious tone, he said, Of course this has to do with me, can't you see I'm waiting to take my place? I withdrew my hand from his grip, while forcing a proper smile, suppressing the turmoil within. This trip abroad has led me astray. After greeting Uncle Jiang, I left the gathering and returned to my apartment. Ever since my parents passed away, I have not dared to return to the home where I lived for over 20 years. The house my father chose for me has already become someone else's home. Knock knock knock. Serena, knock knock knock. The secretary's anxious knocking successfully woke me up. As I just opened the door, before she even stepped inside, I heard her anxiously say, Serena, you are trending at the top of today's hot search. The secretary entered the room, still in her clothes, and hurriedly took out her tablet from her bag. The characters of my suspected marital discord with Harris suddenly appeared on the front pages of major media outlets. The president of the Su Group is suspected of cheating on his wife, taking his mistress to a banquet, and is believed to have been caught by the president of the Fu Group. The Su president took his mistress to the banquet and was spotted by a friend of Harris, leading to a suspected conflict, with Serena fiercely fighting to protect the mistress. The accompanying images below include one of me shaking off Daisy's hand, where she almost fell. Another shows me pulling James behind me, and the last one is of Harris glaring at me after I walked away. Netizens are overwhelmingly in favor of Harris. It is said that Harris's marriage to Serena was entirely forced by Serena's father. Harris had someone he liked, but they were forcibly separated. As a result, just one day after the wedding, Serena's father passed away. What a retribution. Maybe Serena's father knows the kind of trouble his daughter is getting into and is trying to find a scapegoat. Harris only has a mother, and he takes advantage of the fact that women are soft-hearted. Only 3 years into the marriage and already unable to withstand loneliness, the Su family's upbringing is truly something to behold. My gaze was fixed on the words Su Corporation's president's infidelity, retribution, and Su family's upbringing, my fingers gripping the tablet so tightly that they turned white, feeling as if a hand was tightly clutching my chest. I breathed heavily and then smashed the tablet to the ground. The shattered screen resembled the years of my relationship with Harris. The secretary said calmly, Serena, should we suppress the trending topic? I sat down on the sofa, forcing myself to calm down. No need, contact the legal department and draft a divorce agreement. Well, this trending topic. The secretary did not continue on this subject, but pointed out the impact it could have, which might be detrimental to the company's stock price. The trending topic will certainly be removed, but it shouldn't be us who does it. I said coldly. Just then, the phone rang, and I saw the name James. I swiped to answer. Serena, don't pay attention to the trending topic, I'll handle it, James's calm voice came through the phone. James, it's almost over. The remaining matters I will handle well. This is a grudge between Harris and me, and I don't want you to get involved. I said gently. Okay, you have to remember, I will always be behind you. After hanging up the phone, I whispered. James, I have always known. On the morning of the hat day. Have you thought it through? When Harris's call came in, I was discussing the contents of the divorce agreement with the company's legal department. I've thought it through. I spoke calmly. Just because of those boring trending topics, you want to divorce me? Harris asked, puzzled. I was regarded as the third party who ruined their relationship by his white moonlight, subjected to cold mockery. Now he spreads rumors about my infidelity, putting me on trending searches. It makes me and my deceased parents suffer from public scrutiny. He thinks a casual, boring trending topic can erase the past. What a joke. I didn't answer his question, but scoffed instead. Harris, after the divorce, you can bring your white moonlight home, shouldn't you be happy? The sound of shattering glass came from the phone, and Harris angrily said, Serena, it was your family that pressured me into this marriage in the first place, and now it's you who wants a divorce. What do you take me, Harris, for? The hand holding the phone tightened little by little, suppressing the anger in my heart. I said coldly, Harris, what are you pretending to be a victim for? Did my family force you? I gave a self-deprecating smile and continued, I also told you at the time that if it was forced, you could refuse. It was you who didn't refuse, don't forget it was also you who agreed to this wedding. No one forced you. When my father first asked me to marry Harris, we hadn't seen each other for 5 years. I knew that Harris had someone he liked, so our engagement was destined to have no outcome. As my father recounted the vow he made with Uncle Fu, I knew that this was a fate I could not escape. My father had to fulfill his promise to his deceased friend. I had no choice, so let Harris make the choice. But what I didn't expect was that Harris actually agreed. Clearly, he was the one who gave up on his own love and pushed me into the abyss. Now he blames everything on me and my dad. Harris didn't say anything, only a faint voice of Daisy came through the receiver. Honey, I prepared a gift for you, tell me if you like it. It's Harris's birthday, and as someone who is about to become an ex-wife, I certainly need to express something. Harris, I have already signed the divorce agreement, and someone will deliver it to your office this afternoon. I also have a big gift for you. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. If you annoy me, of course, I won't let you have your way. Sitting in the cafe of the Sioux building, I observed Daisy across from me with a playful expression. Serena, Harris refuses to sign. The secretary called. He will sign it, just wait a little longer. I raised my eyes and glanced at Daisy, who was sitting across from me, and said with certainty. I have already sent the secretary to the Fu group to personally deliver the divorce agreement to Harris. I hung up the phone and looked at Daisy, saying slowly, I haven't looked for you yet, but you came first. So, what's the matter? Daisy was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and said, You don't suspect that I leaked the trending news, do you? I laughed and said, Did I mention trending topics? Let's first talk about the purpose of your visit. There's no silver here, 300 taels, I thought you had some extraordinary means, but it turns out to be nothing more than this. Daisy vaguely evaded the question. I didn't. I'm feeling annoyed, I said, I don't have time to reminisce with Miss Daisy. I lazily leaned back on the sofa, picked up the coffee on the table, and took a small sip. It was a bit bitter. TSK, so bitter, hard to swallow. Since Miss Daisy loves to drink it so much, then she can savor it slowly. After saying that, I got up to leave. Serena, stop. I haven't finished speaking. Daisy immediately stood up, her slender fingers gripping my arm. I coldly glanced at the hand holding my arm, meeting her feigned calm gaze, and said coldly, I'll give you another 10 minutes. Daisy's expression changed repeatedly as she released my hand. Her face was full of anger, and disregarding the people around us, she questioned me, Serena, why haven't you divorced yet? Clinging to someone who doesn't love you, don't you have any self-respect? What does it matter to you, Miss Daisy, whether I get divorced or not? My tone was calm, my emotions showing little fluctuation, and my eyes were filled with disdain. Don't think that just because you are now the one in power in the Sioux family, you can look down on me. But how did you come to hold this power? It was only because your parents passed away that it fell to you. Daisy's voice was full of mockery. If your parents were still alive, you would just be the young lady of the Sioux family, with no say in the company at all. Slap, slap. I raised my hand and gave Daisy 2 slaps. How dare you mention my parents? Has Harris taken such good care of you these past few years that you've become utterly foolish? If it weren't for Harris insisting on finding Daisy after the wedding, disregarding the dignity of both families and causing Mrs. Fu to have a heart attack, my parents wouldn't have spent the night in the hospital and would not have had a car accident the next day in their exhausted state. Mrs. Fu passed away immediately after learning of my parents' death. And for all of this, Harris blamed me. He said I shouldn't have been angry because he went to find Daisy, it was my immaturity that led to such an outcome. At first, I always thought that all of this was caused by Harris's selfishness. Until recently, at a gathering with friends at the Royal Club, I inadvertently overheard Daisy's friend talking about what happened back then. She said that Daisy pretended to be sick on purpose, just to prove that her position in Harris's heart was higher than mine. Daisy, Harris, I won't let either of you off the hook. Daisy covered her swollen face and said through gritted teeth, "Do you think that's why Harris left you? What man can stand your spoiled princess temper? You forced him to apply to the same school as you, he didn't want to study but had to force himself to learn. Have you ever considered his feelings? Only I truly understand him. He feels relaxed when he is with me, free from the worries of studying, and I don't have to constantly instruct him on how to be a qualified successor. All he feels by my side is happiness, so he wants to stay away from you." Looking at Daisy's furious face, I suddenly found it utterly ridiculous. What kind of successor does a wealthy family need? Daisy doesn't understand, does Harris not understand either? My parents are well aware of the difficulties faced by Harris's mother, and because Harris's father saved my father's life, they take good care of them. What I learn, my parents also require Harris to learn together. My dad has been training me as his successor since I was little, so the expectations are high, and I learn a lot. As for Harris, his mother is indeed soft-hearted and somewhat indulgent towards him. Without our Su family, where would the current scale of the Fu family come from? Harris's mother knows this all too well, so after learning about my parents' car accident and their deaths, she passed away in guilt. Yet when I took over the Su family and encountered difficulties, Harris chose to watch coldly from the sidelines. Clearly, he was the one who sowed the seeds, yet I am the one who must bear the consequences. I can't help but wonder how much sincerity was behind Harris's kindness towards me in our childhood. Daisy, I have already sent the signed divorce agreement to the president's office of the Fu building. I looked at Daisy and scoffed, but Harris refuses to sign. I can't be blamed for this, it seems that it's not me who is clinging on, but him, Harris, who is stubbornly holding on to me. I continued to stoke the fire, it's just a pity that the child in your belly, after all, is just like you, unworthy of the spotlight. Daisy heard what I said, glared at me fiercely, and shouted in anger, "Impossible, Harris can't not want me and the child, yes, you must be lying." I mocked, "Oh? Whether it's true or not, you can just go back and confirm, right? By the way, I forgot to tell you, my secretary just called to tell me that Harris refuses to sign." I deliberately emphasized the last few words. Daisy suddenly stood up, didn't even look at me again, and turned to disappear at the entrance of the cafe. Back in the president's office, I nestled on the sofa for a short nap. When I opened my eyes again, the outside was already ablaze with lights. The secretary sat on the other side of the sofa, organizing the documents. "When did you come back?" I was still half asleep, just waking up, and my throat was a bit hoarse. The secretary handed me a glass of water and said, "Half an hour ago." "How is everything going?" I took the cup, drank a few sips of water, and asked. "When I went, Harris said he wouldn't sign, so you might as well give up on that." About 2 hours later, Miss Daisy appeared and had a quarrel with Harris, even threatening him with the child in her womb. Under Miss Daisy's mix of soft and hard tactics, Harris ultimately signed the document. The secretary pushed the divorce agreement in front of me. I picked up the divorce agreement in front of me, my fingers slowly tightening. It was almost over. The secretary left after reporting tomorrow's schedule. I picked up the phone that I had set aside and clicked on Harris's profile. Just as the call was about to end, I heard Harris's tired voice on the other end. "I've already signed the divorce agreement, is there anything else you want?" I was slightly taken aback, probably because Daisy had really put in a lot of effort this time, so I needed to step up my game. "The agreement has been signed, and I'm just arranging for Harris to go pick up the divorce certificate tomorrow. Serena, don't regret it." I hadn't even mentioned the time when Harris hung up the phone. Tomorrow morning at 8, in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau, no matter what. Watching the other side typing on the message interface, 5 minutes later, I only received a good in reply. I couldn't help but smile faintly. James arrived at the bottom of my apartment building at 7:30 in the morning, right on time. He was wearing a black casual suit, the collar slightly open, broad shoulders and a narrow waist, long legs, plus impeccable features. Who wouldn't drool and whistle a little at the sight? I chose a red lawn dress, my hair up in a bun, without any makeup, revealing my fair swan neck. James drove me to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The time on my phone showed exactly 8 o'clock. But I didn't see Harris. Could he have changed his mind? James stared at the passing cars and said, "Not at all, just wait a little longer." I was looking at the trending topics about me these days and continued, "Even if he regrets it, Daisy will pull him over." As soon as I finished speaking, I saw Harris and Daisy appear at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I got out of the car with James and walked towards the door. I asked why he was in such a hurry to divorce me. It turned out he wanted me to make room for someone else. "Serena, can't you live without a man? We haven't even divorced yet, and you're so impatient?" Harris's words were full of sarcasm. "Will you?" James clenched his fists and said angrily, stopping me from moving forward. I looked at Harris and casually said, "Harris, same to you." After that, I pulled James and turned to enter the Civil Affairs Bureau. The Civil Affairs Bureau works very quickly. Half an hour later, we each drove away. After just a month of the cooling-off period, we can obtain the documents. James directly took me to the company. "Serena, you have worked hard these years. When everything is over, please allow me to accompany you through the rest of your life." James's eyes were filled with deep affection. "James, are you proposing to me?" My eyes were full of smiles. "That can be understood that way, so will you accept?" James asked a bit nervously. "I accept you." After saying that, I unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned over to kiss his cheek. A month passed quickly, and Harris and I finally received the divorce certificate. When Daisy saw the divorce certificate in Harris's hand, her face was full of smiles, her mouth couldn't close. Yet she didn't notice Harris's expression at that moment, which could freeze an elephant. Daisy was eagerly looking forward to getting the marriage certificate with Harris today, but to her surprise, Harris didn't even glance at her and walked straight out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I watched Harris's back and took out my phone to call the secretary. It could begin now. In less than 5 minutes, major media outlets reported that Harris, the president of the Fu Group, had an extramarital affair, indulged his mistress, and that she was pregnant and pressuring him. The president of the Su Group was disheartened, and the two obtained a divorce certificate today. The accompanying image is a pregnancy checkup report for Daisy, along with the video of her shouting in my office. There's also the bragging message she sent me on our 3rd anniversary. And all the evidence of her harassment over the past few years. In an instant, the wind changed direction, and netizens turned against him. It turned out that Harris was the unfaithful one. I have some inside information. The trending topic that spread last time was actually provoked by the mistress, and Harris was pressuring Serena to apologize to the mistress. The man standing behind Serena was just standing up for her, but this pair of scumbags turned it into a story that Serena was keeping a toy boy. It turns out that Harris cheated first, yet he turned the tables, wanting to ruin Serena's reputation and force her to leave empty-handed, all to make room for his mistress? Scumbag, so damn shameless. I looked at the trending page on my phone, secretly anticipating the next gift for Harris. How would Harris react when he found out the truth? Within 5 minutes, another trending news alert popped up. Someone dug up information about the mistress Daisy, and naturally, some people started to make comments. I am a high school classmate of Harris, Serena, and Daisy. In high school, Harris and Serena were always the objects of our envy, childhood sweethearts whose friendship grew up together, inseparable until Daisy's lies tore them apart. Before, Daisy had always acted weak and pitiful, making Harris sympathize with her. In the end, Daisy accused Serena of bullying her, which led to the rift between Serena and Harris. Moreover, the reason Daisy transferred to this school was because of a kind gesture from Serena. Daisy was a poor student that Serena's family had been supporting. In her senior year, she mentioned to Serena that she wanted to come to our school, and without hesitation, Serena made it happen. Serena never told anyone about this. Little did she expect to be betrayed. After reading the comments from netizens, I suddenly felt enlightened. There is one last big gift, which should be on Harris's desk at this moment, just waiting for Harris to open it personally. Harris hasn't come to find me because of the trending topic. The secretary said that someone from the Foo group saw him leaving the company with a document, his face full of anger. That was the document I had someone place on his desk. Inside was the truth from that year. Daisy's friend not only mentioned how she faked illness to ruin our wedding, but also brought up the calls and messages I sent him after my parents and his mother passed away, all of which were deleted by Daisy. As a result, he didn't get to see his mother for the last time. If it weren't for the call from his friend that he answered, he would have missed his mother's funeral. Inside, there is also a share transfer document signed by Harris's mother before she died, in which she transferred all her shares to me, leaving only 5% of the shares for her son for his retirement. I had never touched the Foo family before, I just wanted Harris to experience the feeling of falling from a height. After learning the whole truth, Harris found Daisy and caused her to miscarry. As a result, Daisy had her uterus removed and almost lost her life. Harris was taken away by the police at the hospital and received the punishment he deserved. The wedding between James and me took place as scheduled. When he held my hand and excitedly said "I do," I smile with immense happiness. I am so grateful that that person has been silently waiting for you all along.